Just keep going, just keep going up, just keep going, just keep going up. You can't turn back, you come too far, you can't give up, you work too hard. Just keep going, just keep going up, just keep going, just keep going up. You can't turn back, you come too far, you can't give up, you work too hard.
Welcome back to Dissertation in 90 Days, the podcast that's here to help you navigate every step of your doctoral journey. I'm Dr. J, your host, and today we're tackling a topic that is crucial not only for the success of your dissertation, but also for your integrity as a researcher: ethical considerations in dissertation research. When conducting research, especially when it involves human participants, ethics must be at the forefront of your planning and execution. Failing to adhere to ethical guidelines can have serious consequences, not just for your study, but for your academic career and the well-being of those involved in your research. In today's episode, we'll discuss what it means to conduct ethical research, the key principles you need to follow, and how to navigate common ethical challenges. Whether you're in the early stages of your research or preparing to collect data, this episode will equip you with the knowledge and tools you need to protect your participants and uphold the highest ethical standards. Let's get started. Ethical research isn't just about following rules. It's about ensuring that your research respects the rights, dignity, and well-being of everyone involved. The ethical considerations you'll need to address in your dissertation will depend on various factors, including your research methodology, the population you're studying, and the context of your research. However, there are some universal principles that apply to all research involving human participants. The first and most fundamental principle is informed consent. Informed consent means that participants must be fully aware of the nature of the research, what it will involve, and any potential risks or benefits before they agree to take part. This consent must be given voluntarily, without any form of coercion or undue influence. But informed consent is more than just a formality. It's a process. This process involves providing participants with clear and comprehensive information about the study, ensuring they understand what participation entails, and allowing them to ask questions before they make a decision. When obtaining informed consent, it's important to consider the accessibility of the information you provide. This means using language that is clear and understandable to your participants, avoiding jargon or overly technical terms. If your research involves vulnerable populations, such as children, individuals with disabilities, or those with limited literacy, it's essential to take additional steps to ensure they fully understand what they're consenting to. This might involve using simplified language, providing consent materials in multiple formats, or working with caregivers or legal guardians to obtain consent. Informed consent is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process. Throughout your research, you should keep participants informed about any changes in the study that might affect their willingness to continue participating. If you make significant changes to your research design, methodology, or even the goals of your study, you may need to reobtain consent, particularly if those changes introduce new risks or alter the nature of the study. Moreover, informed consent also involves being transparent about the limitations of confidentiality. For example, in some cases, you may be required by law to report certain information disclosed by participants, such as instances of abuse or threats of harm. It's crucial to explain these limitations to participants at the outset so that they can make an informed decision about whether or not to participate. Another key ethical principle is confidentiality. Confidentiality means protecting the privacy of your participants by ensuring that their data is kept secure and that their identities are not disclosed without their permission. This involves not only safeguarding the data you collect, but also being mindful of how you report your findings. In some cases, even anonymized data can inadvertently reveal the identity of participants, especially if your study involves a small or close-knit community. It's important to consider these risks when designing your research and to take appropriate measures to protect your participants' privacy. When planning for confidentiality, think about how you will store and manage the data you collect. Digital data should be stored on secure, password-protected servers, and physical data, such as paper surveys or consent forms, should be kept in locked, secure locations. Additionally, consider the process of de-identification, where identifying information is removed or coded to protect participants' privacy. This is especially important if you plan to share your data with other researchers or publish your findings. But confidentiality extends beyond just data storage. It also includes how you communicate with participants during the study. For example, if you're conducting interviews or focus groups, think about where these sessions will take place and how you can ensure that participants feel secure and that their responses remain private. You should also consider how you will handle situations where participants may accidentally reveal identifying information, either about themselves or others, during the course of your research. Let's talk about the ethical principle of non-maleficence, which is the obligation to avoid causing harm to participants. This principle is at the core of research ethics and requires that researchers carefully consider the potential risks and benefits of their study. Risks can take many forms, from physical harm in biomedical research to psychological distress in social science studies. Your responsibility as a researcher is to minimize these risks as much as possible and to ensure that any remaining risks are outweighed by the potential benefits of the research. In some cases, minimizing risk might involve modifying your research design. For example, if your study involves asking participants about traumatic experiences, consider how you can provide support or referrals for those who may experience distress as a result of participating. It might also involve obtaining additional ethical approvals or conducting a thorough risk assessment before beginning your study. Importantly, if the risks of your research outweigh the potential benefits, you may need to reconsider your approach or choose a different research topic. One aspect of non-maleficence that is sometimes overlooked is the impact of your research on participants after the study is completed. It's essential to consider how participants might be affected by their involvement in your research, even after the data collection phase has ended. For example, if your study involves a sensitive topic, participants might experience ongoing emotional distress. To address this, you should have a plan in place for providing resources or referrals to support services if needed. Additionally, think about how your findings might be used or interpreted by others, particularly if your research could have implications for policy or practice. Ensuring that your findings are presented accurately and responsibly is a key part of minimizing harm. This includes avoiding sensationalism or misrepresentation of the results, particularly when dealing with controversial or sensitive topics. Another essential aspect of ethical research is respect for autonomy, which means acknowledging and respecting the participants' right to make their own decisions about whether or not to participate in your study. This principle is closely related to informed consent, but also extends to how you interact with participants throughout the research process. It's important to ensure that participants know they can withdraw from the study at any time without penalty or negative consequences. This respect for autonomy also means being honest and transparent with your participants about the nature of your research and what you hope to achieve. Respect for autonomy also involves being mindful of how you approach and recruit participants. For example, if you are conducting research in a cross-cultural context or with marginalized communities, it's important to approach your research with cultural sensitivity and an understanding of power dynamics. This might mean working with community leaders to ensure that your research is conducted in a way that is respectful and beneficial to the community. Or it could involve adapting your research methods to better align with cultural practices and values. Autonomy is also critical when considering the right to refuse participation or the right to withdraw from the study. Participants should always feel that they are free to make these decisions without any pressure or negative consequences. As a researcher, it's your responsibility to create an environment where participants feel comfortable expressing their autonomy. Now, let's discuss the importance of justice in research. The principle of justice requires that the benefits and burdens of research be distributed fairly among all participants. This means that no group should be unfairly burdened or exploited for the sake of research, and all participants should have the opportunity to benefit from the results of the study. For example, if your research has the potential to lead to new treatments or interventions, it's important to ensure that these benefits are accessible to the populations who participated in the study, especially if they come from underserved or marginalized communities. Justice also involves being mindful of how you select your participants. Your selection criteria should be fair and based on the needs of your research, not on convenience or bias. For example, if you're studying a particular health condition, your participants should be selected based on their experience with that condition, not on their availability or proximity to your institution. Additionally, you should avoid excluding participants based on characteristics such as race, gender, or socioeconomic status, unless these characteristics are directly relevant to your research question. Another key aspect of justice is ensuring that the burdens of research, such as time commitments or potential risks, are shared equally among participants. If one group is bearing a disproportionate burden, it may be necessary to reassess your study design or recruitment methods to ensure that your research is fair and equitable. Ethical considerations also extend to how you handle and report your research findings. Integrity in research means being honest and transparent about your methods, your data, and your conclusions. This includes accurately representing your findings, acknowledging the limitations of your study, and avoiding practices such as data manipulation or selective reporting. It's also important to give credit where it's due. This means properly citing the work of others and being transparent about your contributions to collaborative projects. In some cases, maintaining integrity in research might involve making difficult decisions, such as whether to publish findings that could be controversial or unpopular. It's important to weigh the potential impact of your findings on the community, your participants, and the broader field of research. If your findings have the potential to cause harm or perpetuate stigma, consider how you can present them in a way that is responsible and sensitive to these issues. Let's not forget the role of ethical review boards, often referred to as institutional review boards, IRBs, in the United States. These boards are responsible for reviewing and approving research studies to ensure that they meet ethical standards. Before you begin your research, you'll likely need to submit a detailed proposal to an IRB, outlining your research question, methodology, and how you plan to address ethical concerns. The IRB will review your proposal and may require you to make changes before granting approval. The IRB process can seem daunting, but it's an important safeguard that ensures your research is conducted ethically. Take the time to carefully prepare your IRB application and be sure to address all potential ethical issues in detail. If your research involves vulnerable populations, sensitive topics, or high-risk procedures, you may need to provide additional documentation or obtain special approvals. Remember, the goal of the IRB is not to hinder your research, but to protect the rights and well-being of your participants. Once your study is underway, it's important to maintain open communication with the IRB and report any unexpected ethical issues that arise. If a participant expresses discomfort or if an unforeseen risk emerges, you should pause your study and consult the IRB before proceeding. Ethical research is an ongoing process, and maintaining transparency with your ethics board is key to navigating challenges as they arise. Finally, let's talk about ethical challenges that may arise during your research. Even with careful planning, unexpected issues can occur, and it's important to be prepared to address them. For example, you might encounter participants who want to withdraw from the study after data collection has begun, or you might face challenges in maintaining confidentiality when sharing your findings. In these situations, it's essential to remain flexible and responsive, always prioritizing the rights and well-being of your participants. If you encounter an ethical dilemma that you're unsure how to handle, don't hesitate to seek advice from your advisor, your institution's ethics board, or other trusted colleagues. Ethical research is a collective responsibility, and it's important to use the resources available to you to ensure that your study is conducted with the highest standards of integrity. Remember, ethical research is not just about following guidelines, it's about fostering trust between you and your participants, contributing positively to your field, and maintaining the integrity of the research process. It's about conducting research that you can be proud of, knowing that you've respected the rights and dignity of those who made your study possible. And that's a wrap on today's episode about ethical considerations in dissertation research. Conducting ethical research isn't just about following rules. It's about ensuring that your study respects and protects the people who make it possible. By prioritizing informed consent, confidentiality, non-maleficence, respect for autonomy, justice, and integrity, you can conduct research that not only contributes to your field, but also upholds the highest standards of ethical practice. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Dissertation in 90 Days. I hope you found this discussion valuable as you prepare for your research. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. Share this podcast with your fellow grad students who might also benefit from these insights. And as always, I encourage you to connect with our Grad Mentor Network for more resources and support. Remember, ethical research is foundational to the success of your dissertation and to your growth as a scholar. By conducting your research ethically, you not only protect your participants, but also strengthen the credibility and impact of your work. Until next time, keep striving for excellence in your work and stay committed to the highest ethical standards. I'm Dr. J, signing off. Goodbye.